All right, welcome everyone to the weekly edition of Polar Opposites. Annie and CP, you want to say hi real quick?
Woo woo! What's up, everybody?
We are going to be discussing. We're going to be discussing some of the most divisive topics in the outdoor world, and some maybe a little less divisive. But we'll see what we're going to cover today. Both Annie and CP know the content that we're going to be covering, and so. For the final argument, they've been able to prepare some answers, but they don't know which side they're going to be arguing. So actually, I'd like to start off today with just a random fact for the day, because if you don't learn anything else, at least you learn one thing, and that is that since the planet Pluto was discovered in February of 1930, it has yet to make an entire orbit around the sun.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's out there.
And it won't make an orbit around the sun until like 2138 or something like that.
Thanks for that fact, Eric.
I already knew that, actually.
Oh, I was going to say it's really out there like CP, but I held it in. But if you're ready to bring out the gun, CP, I'm ready too.
So our first topic today, we're gonna start off with CP because you can tell he's just eager to. He's chomping at the bit right now. What do you think about while you're skiing all day, CP?
Well, very, very deep thoughts all the time, every day. No, I mean, I kind of just take inspiration from what's around me, especially up on the ice cap. There's enough going on to stay stimulated all day, even if you're not skiing side by side with someone, talking, sharing stories. If I get in a rut or if I get a really terrible song stuck in my head, I try to remember all the lyrics to Bob Dylan's Tangled Up in Blue. Yeah, besides that, just plug away. There's plenty to look at. How about you, Annie?
I'm just putting up the title. Hang on one sec. Okay, so what do I think about on those really long days? I prefer to be thinking about navigation. When I'm in a spot where I have to be thinking as I navigate, which way do I want to go around this or that, or what's that cover there, that sort of thing. I like that. What's this, if I'm on the water, what's this bay, or where do I think this point is? So I like thinking about navigating, but oftentimes when we find ourselves, the three of us often find ourselves skiing in like big open white spaces where there's not a whole lot to look at and there's not too much to think about. And then I have a really annoying tendency to count my steps and try to guess like if I've gone a kilometer or if I've gone a tenth of a kilometer. And that's annoying because then even when you don't want to be doing it, in the back of my head, I'm counting. And so sometimes to get my mind off of that, I'll do like mathematical equations. I'm not a math person entirely. I don't love math and I didn't do great in math in school, but I find myself doing a lot of math equations and solving mathematical problems when I'm out skiing.
That's so interesting because CP, anyway, you sound like you have some pretty deliberate thoughts that happen, and mine are anything but deliberate. If it's like flat and calm and there's no active thinking that needs to be done about navigation, my head is just off somewhere else. I'll look at my watch and be like, "Oh, it's been a half an hour and I have no idea what's gone in my head for the last 30 minutes."
It's what you want to hear from your leader.
I said if there's not anything other important things to be thinking about.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Different story if you're in polar bear country, if you're set
for sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. Our second topic is can be kind of divisive among outdoor enthusiasts, and it's when you're out in the wilderness, do you like to go totally off the grid with no contact, or do you like to have some contact, whether that's like texting via satellite or staying in touch with people back home for any reason? So Annie, why don't you start off with this one?
Yeah, thanks. I love going off the grid, but I'm finding it harder and harder to do because a lot of the places I love to go require me to take a communication device. And I completely get that, because you're applying for permits and entry spots or exit spots. And if you don't show up when you're supposed to, the governing body's sort of like, okay, now what? And it's a lot easier for people, for those place issue permits, to be able to reach out or know that you have a communication device, so that if they need to do a search and rescue or something like that, they've got a starting point. So a lot of places are requiring communication devices, not necessarily phones, but maybe something like a tracker that allows you to send texts and whatnots. But my preference is to be off the grid. Now, I've got some caveats on that, because I have 2 small kids, and I've got some aging parents. And so I have to say that it's sort of nice that I can go off and need to check in ever, or if somebody needs to send me a message saying that something's happened to dad or something like that, that I'm not so off the grid. It allows me, I feel like, to be able to go and to be able to go off and make that decision to leave easier if I know that I'm not taking on all these, well, what happens if this happens while I'm gone and whatnot. But of course, I'll let CP chime in, but I've got a little bit more to say.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I'm with you, Annie. If you can bring a satellite phone, you can bring a spot locator, all these things that you can use in an emergency if you absolutely have to get in touch. But I don't know, if you're getting out there, you want to be out there and not. I don't want to know how the Cubs are doing, how what's going on at the grocery store or anything. I want to be out in the woods, letting my mind go places where Eric's does after apparently 10 minutes of skiing at a time. I envy you there, Eric. But yeah, definitely off the grid is the way to go. Have that lifeline when you need it, but yeah, I'm interested to hear what else you have to say about it.
Well, I have to admit that one of the features that I kind of like about the devices that have come out more recently are the tracking device. I do a lot of wilderness trips with my 2 daughters, just to give up, and I can leave the tracking information with my husband, and it allows him to be able to kind of just feel like he's keeping an eye on us, so that we don't just say, okay, hey, see you in 3 weeks or whatever. It allows him to, see that we're still moving on a daily basis at least. But it's not really being in touch, as long as I keep it powered. But that's one of the things also I have to admit. I feel like those communication devices, they're becoming really popular right now. And it's such a false security. And it's so, people like us, and I think a lot of the people that we travel with, we go in wilderness ever really with knowing the consequences and taking them really seriously. But having a communication device can be such a sense of false security, because one drop or not paying attention to the batteries or bringing a solar charger and having poor sunlight, or satellites can go out. There's so many things that can go wrong with communication devices that it's I kind of like reminding myself of that too, because I do like the feeling of being alone. It is such a different feeling when you are unable to communicate at all with the outside world than just knowing that you've got something tucked away, even if it's in your pack. It's just there, giving you a little bit of security. Like, if you take away that security, it's a different feeling entirely, and I love that feeling.
Yeah, that self-sufficiency is getting harder and harder to come by, and it's a great feeling. My final thoughts on the subject are that, if you're traveling in a group, keeping a blog, keeping your story can be a great fun thing to do. Gets everyone involved. You hear what people are saying, maybe not saying, but thinking during the day. But if it's a personal trip, then definitely I would prefer to be off the grid.
Yeah. So we obviously are seeing both sides of this coin. And I think, though, I'm going to just make a prediction into the future, and I think that it's going to become more and more common, and then eventually expected for people to have some kind of a communication device with them. And so that's just I think that's going to be the future of a lot of wilderness areas, for better or worse.
Yeah, I think that you're right, Annie. And kind of contrary to CP's point, I think when I'm traveling with a group of people, I have a tendency to totally forget about outside connection. I'm constantly I'm a social person. So when there's other people around, I'm just in that group. But if I'm traveling alone, it's hard. It's hard not to try and touch base and engage with people back home.
Well, good for you.
So,
we need some kind of opposition on polar opposites this week. Thanks,
all right, we're down to our big debate topic today, and it might seem kind of clear cut, but I don't think it is. And so, CP, we're actually going to start with you on this one, but our topic is whether to take a tent or to not have a tent when you're in the outdoors. And so I'm gonna choose your side of the argument here today.
CP, your preference before he chooses your side, or maybe we should just wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, it's I personally always bring a tent, but it's definitely cooler to not use it, you know.
Okay, all right, we better.
Well,
okay,
good. You're arguing for tent today.
Okay. So yeah, why would you not bring a tent? This, you know, I know that Annie loves John Ray, the famous, well, not so famous actually, polar explorer who traveled really, really quickly across Canada, not bringing a tent. He would go so fast, and that was part of his advantage, was not having a tent. But that was also when tents weighed like 37 pounds and didn't have zippers on them. You had to close them with buttons, and now tents weigh 2 pounds at the most if you're just bringing this personal backpacking tent. Why would you not want to be able to get out of the wind, out of the rain, keep the bugs off you? Yeah, you can bring some mosquito netting or something, but you can't get up and roll around. And, you know, sometimes you're in a crowded area where you just want some privacy. Maybe you're, you know, need to use your pee bottle, or you're with your special someone, and that's rude if you're just out in the open, you know. That's my argument.
Okay, all right. Well, I love that you brought up John Ray, because he is the coolest explorer ever, and he was such a badass traveling so far, and he would never consider bringing a tent. Now let's just think about, you're right, tents were heavy back then, but like they were men among men and women among women, and we can still do that. Here's the thing about tents: they're heavy. I know you say that you can get some that are about 2 pounds, but if you're going to get a tent that's about 2 pounds, and maybe you're traveling with somebody else, like, why not just carry a tarp there, or why not just sleep under a tree, or why not just build a snow shelter? There have got to be, you know, 6 or 7 really good viable options other than using a tent. And they're more in tune with your environment. They're more fun. They're better for a whole lot of reasons. One of the reasons is that there's better ventilation in most of them. You know, I mean, tents, if you're in cold weather, we all have woken up to having all that frost in our tents. We call it the Rainforest Cafe, where if you move, you get a little snow shower. But if you're using a tarp or something like a tarp, you know, that all the ventilation just goes right out. And the one guy I met at the South Pole one year at the base camp, Patriot Hills, Ray Jardine, classic lightweight guru for lightweight backpacking. You know, we were having a conversation about tents, and he was sharing his opinion on how in tents it's actually so much colder because there's so much more condensation, and it reduces the ability to have that area be warm. And I think he's right. When you've got that tarp set up, you just have a lot more ventilation, which is really nice for condensation, for fresh air, for cooking. And EL, I know that you've had some issues with cooking in tents, and so that's a point that I'm just appealing to the moderator here.
Yeah, I remember what you're talking about.
Cooking and having carbon monoxide, a lot of carbon monoxide, because you were in a storm for like 4 days, and you were cooking inside your tent. So it would have happened to any of us, but it might not have happened had you been in a tarp. One storm in Greenland,
in a not tent.
In a not tent, right? You know, tarps, they are under 10 ounces these days, and you can get a 2-person tarp, you know, or a tarp that's bigger for under 10 ounces. You can configure them in so many other ways. Smaller footprint on the ground. So many great things about it. And I won't even get into building quinsies or snow caves, or I'm not a personal fan of the hammock. Had some bad experiences with that, but anyways, so there you have it.
All right, CP, what do you have to say to that?
Well, the first thing I have to say is that when you're picking a winner, remember that Annie ragged on your cooking in a tent. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I can't argue that the ventilation's better, but when it's blowing 40 miles an hour outside, have a great time with your one-sided tarp while I'll be tucked away nice and warm in my tent with all of the buddies from your tent group, your tarp group, who are coming in to get in my shelter.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, CP, what about a snow wall? You can build a snow wall and block that wind so easily. Or, you probably haven't spent too many nights in tarps. A great mega mid. Dig out the bottom of mega mid can handle storm so well, and you can stand up in it. So we're going to be doing the jig while you're all huddled there, like leaning your shoulders into the tent wall, because the tent wall is beginning to collapse. And in order to fix that, it's a lot harder than going outside and just shimmying up some lines. You got some poles that are being bent and all sorts of things.
That sounds a whole lot like a tent to me, doesn't it?
Yeah, I
think we're starting to split hairs on what a tent is.
No, like something like the Mega Mid is not a tent. It's a floorless shelter, but it's not a tent. A tent, something that encompasses you and has a floor and has a front door and a back door. That's a tent. And then you guys laugh, but I'm being serious here, because the greatest benefits of not using a tent are that ventilation and the ability to get it easily in and out if you want to have spills just penetrate right into the ground. If you've got water dripping off the sides of that, like enjoy yourself in your big rainstorm when you start to have water puddling in the tent and it can't go anywhere except for dribble down into your sleeping bag because you're basically in a bathtub. Whereas me in my no tent, all that stuff's going to go right into the ground, and I'm just going to be sleeping there really cozy and comfortably, playing my cards with all your tent mates who have moved over to my not tent.
All right, I think that this one has been pretty settled. I did not think that it was going to go this way because CP, like you said, there's very few reasons to not bring a tent these days. But I have to say that Annie, out of the way, I might not bring a tent next time.
Yeah, you shouldn't bring a tent. Sleep out under the stars. If it's cold, go under some tree branches. They're amazing at trapping heat. They're really good at trapping heat. And then, when the only time you really need a tent, I admit, is bugs. Mm-hmm. I will use a tent for bugs because I just don't like the idea of like a little bug shelter. I've slept out under the stars in my head net, and it really wasn't fun.
Mm-hmm.
But
so we're calling you the winner today, Annie. What would you like to say with your 15 seconds of whatever you want?
Oh, was that a cheers, CP? Thanks.
That's cheers. Cheers, Annie. Well done.
Well, I what do I want to say? Gosh, I'm so excited for summer come and for us to get out and enjoy our wilderness areas. I hope that everybody's doing good with coronavirus and that you're able to get out too and just be smart about how you're getting out there and enjoying the outdoor areas. CP, I'm going to give you 10 seconds of my 10 seconds because I don't have too much to say.
Well, sure. I just want to commemorate a great artist that we lost since the last Polar Explorers, Little Richard. He was the first musical artist that I ever really, really loved. I grew up on Raffi, and then the first time I heard Little Richard, I thought, okay, I don't need any more of Raffi in my life ever again. Great guy, best version of Itsy Bitsy Little Spider. Little Richard, he's the man.
All right. Oh, yeah, that's perfect. All right. So cheers, everybody. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. And be sure to check in next week for another episode of Polar Opposites on Friday. Also, next Thursday, we'll be having a Zoom video conference on how to get those perfect pictures in a polar environment. So everything that you need to consider when bringing your camera out into some really cold weather. So
all right.
We'll look forward to seeing you guys next week.
That sounds good. I'm just posting one last thing up here. And that's just going to go. There we go. Yeah. Right. All right. See you guys later.
All right.